I am assuming here that most of you are familiar with the concept of intellectual property, but very quickly we'll just go over it. We are basically talking about ideas. And in the latest issue of the Newsweek, which deals with this financial turmoil which is going on, there's one statement that struck me. It says, from the United States point of view, that ideas are our biggest exports. Of course, they referring to ideas, not necessarily intellectual property, technology, but referring to also ideas about democracy, about all kind of things, which they send across the world. But in intellectual property, we are basically talking about ideas. Now, is intellectual property is such a novel issue? Has it been in existence before, 100 years back, 200 years back? Let me cite you some examples to say that, yes, intellectual property has always been in existence. And people have been careful to protect their ideas. Okay? I'll give an example from my own country. In India, like in many other countries, you have people who are specializing in a particular art, a profession, ironsmith, goldsmith, carpenters, or whatever. Now, all these people, of course, had developed over a generation a way of doing things, a way of making gold rings, for example. And that idea often used to be a trade secret, right? They would not, disseminate that to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. They would keep it because their livelihood depended on keeping that idea with themselves. Okay, that's what basically allowed them to earn their living. A very fine example also from an Indian mythology, actually. We have something called Mahabharata, and there's an incident. There's a teacher who knows the arts of war, and he has been hired by the king to teach the princes how to throw arrows and martial arts, basically. There was another gentleman who used to hide behind trees or whatever, and used to copy, used to learn that. He was not authorized, but he was nevertheless learning. And it so happened that over years of imitating, he became a very great, warrior himself. And he went to the teacher and said, I'd like to thank you because I've become a great warrior thanks to you. He said, but I didn't know that you were learning, behind my back. So that was in fact an infringement. I'm making it more sort of, twisting a little bit, distorting the thing. He said, fine, if you did that, now you have to pay a price to a teacher. And so the student said, of course, whatever you say. He says, I want you to chop your right thumb. And he had to do it. So without right thumb, you cannot shoot arrows anymore. So that is the penalty for infringement or enforcement. So I've distorted it quite a bit, but just to say that intellectual property has been in existence ever since human beings started thinking. Many of them, of course, have shared their knowledge. Okay, that's a tradition in many countries. And others have kept it to themselves because that gives them a competitive advantage in the marketplace, in the economy, and here I was talking about the goldsmiths and all that. So it's nothing new per se. But what's happening in the modern economy is that more and more we're moving to knowledge-based economy. If you look at the valuation of S&P 500 companies in the United States, European companies, even in developing countries, you will see that in the 70s, for example, roughly 75% of the total value of a company used to be intangible assets, land, building, equipment, plant, machinery, etc., etc. Today, it's inversed. 75% of the value of many companies today resides in intangible assets. And I'm sure our friend Svein will have more to talk about because he's from KPMG and he does a lot of valuation himself. So 75% of the value of companies, many companies, reside in intangible assets, which of course includes the human resources and the customer, the client list, plus also the intellectual property. So it has become very important where tangible assets have lost value. Now, before we run too much along this argument, somebody can come and say, hey, but listen, I mean, the price of gold was $150 not too far, not too long away. Now that's not intangible asset, that's tangible asset. And a lot of countries, economies, prosper based on these tangible assets. But see what's happening today, their value has come down to $80. Okay, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that whatever be the percentage, the importance of intangible assets, including intellectual property, has gone up tremendously. Okay, and this fact has been recognized, including in the by the Jordan government, about the knowledge economy. So we're talking about ideas and creation of mind. There, a country like Jordan or any other country which is not blessed, so to say, with precious natural resources such as petroleum, gold, or others, may have an advantage eventually, because it's a matter of investing in human resources, in human development, in education, and harnessing the power of the mind, of the intellect, to create wealth for the economy, for themselves, for the firms, and eventually for the country as a whole. Some countries were mentioned earlier on, where, such as Singapore or Dubai, that is in fact what they've been doing. They've been tapping tremendous, resources, which is in the mind of the sum total of mind of the economy, and creating wealth for themselves. This is what, in fact, we're talking about. But when you talk about IP and development has been, or growth, has been basically kind of, you take a sum of input traditionally, such as land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, put that into a machine, a box, and out comes a number of goods and services, and that increases over time. And a very simple way of describing the growth. This is what economic growth is. You inject things, inputs, and output, you have goods and services which come out, and that is supposed to grow over time. 5%, 7%, 8%, 10%, etc., etc. Now, if that is the case, how IP gets linked to this process of growth? Well, long time back, in fact in the 30s already, an Austrian economist, Mr. Schumpeter, already had pointed out that if you want to accelerate the process of economic growth, you need to invest in innovation, technology, the same, technology. What technology does is that it basically makes the growth process more efficient. It acts as a multiplier. In very simple terms, you have a machine, you think more and more about it. Today it takes 10 gallons of petroleum, for example, to function. If you find a way where it takes only 5 gallons, you already have a technological breakthrough over here, which makes the process more efficient. So you can do that, and that again adds to the overall process of economic growth. So technology has a major role to play in the process of economic growth and eventually development. Now, of course, when we're talking about technology, we're talking about innovation. Something which doesn't exist is brought into existence through the power of the human mind. It can be an invention, something, a breakthrough thing which comes into existence, or it could be incremental innovation, like making it more efficient. Normally, the process of innovation happens to be incremental. You build upon the thoughts and ideas of others, and you just create value as you go forward into that process.